I think I have power on my laptop, so it should work. Okay, folks, good morning, and welcome to the Tourism Skillshop. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I will be your host today with State of Washington Tourism. I'm the Destination Development Manager at SWT, and I will introduce today's webinar on sports tourism. Please utilize the chat function in Zoom to say hello and let us know where you are zooming in from today. Feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat box during any time of this webinar. You can also use the Q&A feature near the end of the webinar as well. Mike Moe will be joining us today. He is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Tourism Development at SWT. Mike will monitor the chat and help address any questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. He'll also help us answer any questions about the Sports Incentivization Grant. Now, in case you don't know, let me tell you a little bit more about this webinar series. The Tourism Skill Shop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector and broaden their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skill Shop on the third or fourth Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. They are also recorded and shared with registrants as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the industry update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to the Tourism Skillshop and other industry news, issues, and events. Now, let's talk about today's webinar on sports tourism. The Skillshop webinar for November will examine how tourism stakeholders attract sporting events to their communities. Sports tourism accounts for roughly 10% of global expenditure on tourism. Last year, in the United States alone, the total economic impact of sports tourism was $128 billion, which supported 757,600 jobs and generated just over $20 billion in tax revenue. This webinar will cover strategies and incentives for sports tourism, as well as the role of partnerships and infrastructure in sports tourism. With me today, and what you webinar attendees will hear from, are Tammy Dunn, the Executive Director of the Snohomish County Sports Commission, and Cydney Marks-Nicholes, Sports Development Manager of Seattle Southside Sports Alliance. They will share tips, trends, and challenges associated with sports tourism. So Cydney and Tammy, thanks for joining us today. I want to give the audience a little bit more information on Tammy and Cydney before we dive into today's webinar. Like I said earlier, Tammy is the Executive Director of the Snohomish County Sports Commission. She has been involved with sports tourism for the last 20 years. Under her leadership, Snohomish County has hosted local to international sporting events, including the Snohomish United Bigfoot Soccer Tournament, Spartan Race Trifecta, Skate America, and the Fed Cup by BNP Paribas qualifier. And for you tennis folks, or for you non-tennis folks out there, it's a tennis tournament. Tammy is an active member and a past board member of the Sports Events and Tourism Association, that's Sports ETA for short, and is active with the Everett Rotary Club, Snohomish County Parks and Recreation Board. Tammy, thanks for joining us today. And now a little bit more about Cydney. Cydney grew up in Seattle, but left to attend Boston University, where she majored in hospitality administration. Later in London, she attended Bates Business School and received her master's in science in marketing strategy and innovation. Cydney has extensive experience in the sports world, especially in rowing as a coach and athlete. She has also worked in business development realm, managing catered events at the Anaheim Convention Center and executing sales strategies for Armor Mark Uniform Services. Cydney, thank you for joining us today. And ladies, I can't wait for our discussion, our group discussion later on in the webinar. But first, I'm going to try to share my slide deck and give everyone some background information on sports tourism, just so that we're all on the same page. Let's see if I can share my screen. Excellent. Can you all see my screen okay? Excellent. Thanks, Cydney. Okay. All right, folks, thanks. Oops. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Today's agenda, folks, I just have a few slides. We're just going to give you a definition, working definition from UN Tourism of sports tourism. We're going to briefly talk about the economic impact. I'm going to reference sports ETA one more time. It's a great association for resources if you're interested to learning more about sports tourism. And I'll also overview the sports incentivization grant from State of Washington Tourism. That grant program is currently accepting applications as we speak. Sports tourism, I'm fairly new to this, so I'm learning more about sports tourism with Tammy and Cydney. But it's folks that travel to view, but also participate in sporting activities around the world. And this is the fastest growing sector in travel and tourism, according to UN Tourism. It generates approximately 10% of world expenditures on tourism. But more importantly, the estimated growth rate of 17.5% between 2023 and 2030. So that's worldwide. This is, again, the fastest growing sector in tourism. So there could be an opportunity to bring this business to your destination community. There's a lot of resources from UN Tourism. I would direct you to the Sports Tourism UN website. I appreciated the paper on sports tourism and sustainable development goals. There's 17 of those sustainable development goals from UN Tourism. And that publication was published in 2019, I believe. So go ahead and take a look there in your spare time. And also take a look at the Sports Events and Tourism Association, where these numbers come from. I mentioned these earlier today on the beginning of the website of the webinar, and I just also wanted to make another point here. I think, and Tammy, you shared this information with me too, but there's continued growth of sports tourism, especially after the pandemic, and even last year, a 7% growth in just the sheer volume of sports travelers, which reached a new high mark of around 205, just under 205 million people traveling to attend sporting events or participate in sporting events right here in the United States. Like I said, folks, there's a lot more resources from Sports ETA. I was blown away with blog posts, podcasts, events, white papers, reports, you name it. Some of this is free and open to the public. Other stuff will require a membership. Tammy can probably tell us a little bit more about that later, but I would kind of direct you to this organization as well. Now, for the sports incentivization grant from State of Washington Tourism, it's to help destination communities bring new sports business to those communities. New business not held in the destination in the last 3 years. Again, it's looking for competitive tournaments or sporting events. That's really important. And you have to be a nonprofit, a Washington-based nonprofit or city government, sports commission, tribe to apply for these grants. The application period is open, so act fast. The deadline for applications closes in mid-December on December 15th. These grants folks can apply for $30,000 for per application. A match is not required, but that might help your application. And there's $180,000 available in this program for this year. Again, we're looking for more collaboration, the better, with local businesses, chambers, DMOs, all of that collaboration will only help your application. And just a few things to keep in mind. There's more information on the Sports Incentivization Grant on the SWT Grants Program webpage, but eligible expenses, things for fees for referees, permit fees, parking, things of that nature. I also want to point out what's not appropriate for these funds. Monetary awards or even trophies and medals, things like that. And you can't use these funds for print programs that solicit advertising or media buy. So there's a long list of eligible and ineligible expenses for the Sports Incentivization Grant on the SWT webpage. I would direct you there. Tammy, why don't you tell the group about your grant application and your grant project for the Sports Incentivization Grant?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for everyone joining us. And Matt and Mike, thank you for the opportunity to speak with, be part of this panel today. With this incentivization grant that opened up earlier this year, we looked at a new event, and it was the National Beard and Mustache Championship. And it gave us an opportunity to partner with our theater, our hotels, and the event director. We were able to apply for and receive $10,000, and we used it for paying for event staff as well as facility costs. And this grant allowed us to win the bid because we had submitted a bid proposal to host this event. It is a national event. And you wouldn't think that beard and mustache is a championship or a competition, but it is very much so. And they're very serious about it, but they have a lot of fun. So it was a great opportunity for us to highlight a brand new event and excite the community.
Excellent. Thanks, Tammy. And Tammy, I mentioned UN tourism, sports ETA. In our conversation yesterday, you mentioned another resource for folks trying to pursue sports tourism are the local DMOs. Can you kind of elaborate on the partnership between a sports commission or sports professionals, sports tourism professionals, and the local tourism office?
Sure. That's a great question. And I think for the business community in each of our destinations, from our attractions to our restaurants to our hotels, I think a really good resource is the destination management organization. It could be the Convention and Visitor Bureau. It could be a standalone sports commission. Washington State has 3 standalone sports commissions: the Seattle, Spokane, and us. And so, I think if you want to get into the sports, the tourism, and have dedication, everybody's a little bit differently in how they do things. So, knowing that we're a sports commission doesn't mean that you must be a sports commission, because there's a lot of different ways to do all of that.
Well, and Tammy, I think that's a great segue. You are a standalone sports commission. Why don't you tell webinar attendees a little bit more about your organization and how it came to be?
You bet. As I mentioned, standalone sports commission, it's not necessarily a need to be a standalone. We just evolved into a standalone sports commission. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we became a standalone in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. And previously, we were a division of another organization, branded ourselves as a sports commission. And I think the best way to describe it is we just evolved to be a standalone and promote sports tourism for Snohomish County, Washington. And we have another organization, really the Snohomish County Tourism Department. We work with them, a huge partnership in the leisure and other visitor tourism pieces. And so we have a great partnership on that. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit more about Sports Commission, we work to enhance Snohomish County's economy image as a premier sports destination and way of life for its residents by attracting diverse regional, national, and international sports events, assisting sports events, and supporting development of sports facilities. We really are, we want to become the destination for sports, enriching the community and increasing economic vitality through sports. So whether you're a standalone or you're a division, it all kind of resonates as the same thing with what we're trying to do in bringing visitors into our destination.
Well, and the tourism office is also trying to bring visitors into the destination, whether it's leisure travelers or group business. So why don't you tell me, compare and contrast the difference between sports tourism and groups and meeting sales?
Sure. I think that there's a lot of similarities between the groups with meetings, conventions, and group tours, and the sports. We're all about bringing visitors into our destination and having them stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, recreate in our attractions, go and hike, see our scenery, and experience our community. So I think there's a lot of similarities. We're also similar in booking events several years in advance. Meetings, I'll just use Seattle example, Seattle Convention Center, they're booking events years out in advance. Us in the sports world, we're doing the same thing. NCAA, they've already booked years out for the NCAA Women's Final Four through 2020, or excuse me, 2030. And Portland is hosting that event coming up. So that's really exciting in for a new market to be able to be part of the NCAA. There's also like USA Taekwondo, USA Gymnastics. Earlier this year, they had event requests for proposals, RFPs out for events for communities to bid on for 2027 through 2030. So that's how far out they go in advance, and that we're looking to the future. So the meeting side is also exactly the same. I think a little bit of the difference is with the sports, we have a tendency that once the event becomes definite, we have the venue, we have the hotels, we don't really let go of that event. And the way I describe it is that we're kind of attached at the hip. And we become family because we are working with that tournament director on a consistent basis. For an example, to give you an idea, we hosted the USA Softball Western Nationals this last year. And once we finalized the venues and the hotels, our events coordinator started to work on where are we going to have the opening ceremonies, working with the tournament director. How can we help them to secure the opening ceremonies at Funko Field, food trucks, who are some local businesses that would be vendors and be part of this festivities, and then also finding volunteers. We worked with the Boys and Girls Club of Snohomish County. They had some fun things. They were volunteers as well. The other side is that we know our businesses, restaurants, tourism departments, also our chambers, our cities, and so we're working with everybody locally to get the visitor information to create that memorable experience, because we're here to create memories so that people enjoy. So some of those things of an example of what we've done. The other thing with the softball is that we can provide media relations, event marketing. We can promote it through networking opportunities, get them to come and speak. So we really entrench into the community and help that tournament director feel welcome in our community. So sometimes I feel that that's kind of like a little bit of the difference. And it may not be, it may have changed, but I've done sports. And so it's really taking care of your customers.
Yeah, that's that begs another question for me too, is has the community been very receptive to sports tourism, welcoming these groups? Does the community see the benefit?
They do, because I believe that, the sports tourism, we really go beyond just bringing in the events because our local sports teams, they're actually playing in those tournaments. And so our family and friends are playing. And so it's an opportunity to make that connection so that teams locally can play against somebody from California. But then also the businesses see the value in it as well because we're promoting them. And, you can use some data analytics to showcase to the restaurants and the businesses that people are coming to their business and you're actually helping them and you're making it a win-win situation for them.
Yeah, and do you also have, this might come up in our group discussion too with seasonality, but does sports tourism help with seasonality? Do you get to do some indoor sporting events in the wintertime?
We do a little bit during the winter time. I think over the years that I've noticed, and this is a lot throughout the United States, is that we're finding more and more communities are building bigger indoor sports facilities, like 100,000 square feet, so that you can have 8 basketball courts, 16 volleyball courts. And I will say probably in the last 10 years, seen a lot of that development. But I like to say, just because you don't have an indoor sports facility, a large one, don't let that hinder you from being able to host indoor sports during the winter time, because you want to build those relationships with the facilities, and you can find something small that can also turn into be very big and take over your kind of like your whole city with multiple venues in gym spaces. And so again, you're creating those partnerships within your own community.
Excellent. And Tammy, I think you had a slide to share.
I do. My
And
slide to share is really to showcase the different sports that a community can host. We've hosted, we host DY Sports. It's a basketball tournament. It's a local organizer out of Seattle that comes up and puts on youth tournaments. Sometimes there are 100 teams. We've hosted e-gaming with the cops. This is with the Boys and Girls Club. Fantastic. It's more on that community side, but it encourages kids where it's becoming more about careers and education and opportunities for these youth to connect with police departments. We also have a facility for field archery. We do the Spartan race since 2015, softball, and then in 2022 with our Angel of the Winds Arena, we've hosted the Street League skateboarding competition where we had the top Brazilian skateboarder. She won the championship in Everett, so it was really cool for spectators and the fan base to come and see these top athletes.
excellent. And you mentioned a few different, a variety really of sporting events that have come to Snohomish County. What kind of incentives did you kind of use to bring these events to your county?
A couple of them, helping them with our lodging tax grants that are available in Snohomish County. We have a county LTAC grant is the abbreviation. We also have some cities that have LTAC grants as well. So helping those organizations, if they are nonprofits, helping them so that they know where the funding sources are. Also in Snohomish County, we do have Tourism Promotion Area Grant Fund that is for marketing dollars and opportunity to market and bring people in. So we do have some grant opportunities. And I think the other thing is building relationships within our own community to find those in-kind partnerships as well as cash contributions. And then, being able to provide those services. We're unique because we do have an events coordinator that can help with a lot of different services. We also have a marketing specialist that also helps with that, with event marketing and press releases.
Excellent.
And
And
I'll stop sharing.
And Tammy, before we let you go too, I mean, you have 20 years in sports tourism, you've probably seen a lot of change and some ups and downs, including a global pandemic that might have stopped even sports tourism, or you can still play sports outside with masks and social distance. But were there any events that you learned from that weren't as successful, that you kind of became a more seasoned professional after learning from something that wasn't as successful as your other events?
I think the one big key takeaway is building relationships and really understanding that sport or that sporting event. There are some that you will talk to regional and national event organizers that want to come here. But in talking with them and looking at the venues that you have, it may not be a fit, and that's okay. Because you really want to look at what can you host, because not everybody can host everything, but find your niche, find what you can do and do it well, and being able to promote that. So, and it really kind of ties into some of your venues. Again, it ties to the venues, the partnerships, your partnerships with your tourism related businesses, and even your non-tourism business related. It could be your a corporation down the street, or your major employer that is in your town or in county, because they have people that participate. So don't I said broaden your scope. And I think the other piece is you know if you're trying to get into the sports tourism, find a way to brand yourself as a sport, whether it's you're labeled as a division like sports commission or sports alliance. But look at that, because how you're going to fund yourself, and if you can have those partnerships, um, have those. Because I've had people ask me, well, we want to start a sports commission, and I'm like, my first thing is where are you gonna get the funds?
Yeah.
And I only say that is because for 20 years our sports commission was a division, one person, then we were three people with a division, and now we're a standalone, and we're still doing exactly what we did as a sports division. We have 4 staff. We're kind of like that sports destination management organization. So we've evolved. So that's kind of, I guess my advice is, look at some funding, look at your partnerships to make it the best and enhance yourself. And I think Cydney can probably elaborate on more
Yeah.
with collaboration with her own community.
Thanks, Tammy. Perfect segue. Thank you. And Cydney, yes, great advice from Tammy. I know you're fairly new in your position, only 2 years, but you're not new to the world of sports and sports tourism. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in South Seattle in regards to sports tourism?
Sure. Thank you for having me on this shop web shop tonight or today. I'm excited to talk sports. It's something that I love and very passionate about. And like you said, the world of tourism is a little bit new for me. I'm not I don't have as many years of experience as Tammy, so she is always my first call whenever I need some advice. She is so wise in this world of all things sports and tourism. So she's a great resource. I would also recommend at the cautioning that Tammy is a very busy person, but if you do have questions, she is a great resource in herself. So I am grateful for her guidance and help. But I work for Explore Seattle Southside, and we are the DMO for the cities of SeaTac, Tukwila, and Des Moines. So we're funded through the hotel tax for those 3 cities. And I started 2 years ago as the sports business development manager, and I was tasked with all things sports tourism. And I have absolutely loved the role because it's been a little bit fluid. I've kind of got to figure out where it should go as I've learned about the world of sports tourism. And learning from partners and different people that we just have in the sports tourism industry in the area, but also, our local hotels and venues, and just learning from them what goes on down in Seattle Southside. And what we found was that, like Tammy mentioned, you have to find your niche. And so learning what venues and partners that we have and using those assets to kind of help guide us to what we should be doing. And we found that it was important to put a brand behind Explore Seattle Southside to have that sports name. So we formulated in June of this year, the Seattle Southside Sports Alliance. And that was to just kind of really put us on the map as being serious about sports. A lot of event organizers and tournament directors, it's a big deal to bring their event that's normally on the East Coast all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. They see it as something that's an exciting business opportunity, but it's a little bit of a risk as well. And so we found that it's just really giving a strong, we're putting our name on the map, that we're serious about this and that we want your business and we value it and we see value in the sports market. And so kind of put our name in the hat is really wanting to be a serious competitor in this sports tourism world. But we also, from connecting with the venues and partners in the Seattle Southside area, we learned that a lot of the commissions are really focused on the NCAA sports, those massive events that bring in a lot of spectators, and we're very participant focused. So we do a lot of more youth and it's volume in the number of competitors and athletes rather than a baseball game at T-Mobile where there's a lot of spectators. So those smaller they're not necessarily smaller. Some youth soccer tournaments, we have one in the beginning of January that's over 2 weekends and it's over 500 teams. So they're more niche in the sense that not everybody has eyeballs on them, but they're extremely impactful. And so we wanted to create a sports alliance and sports brand so that we can really represent those types of events and be an advocate for our venues and be an advocate for our hotel partners, so that we can make sure that we are, having the same opportunities that our counterparts are in the region, but also just along the West Coast. And
Well, yeah, there's a lot there, Cydney. How about let me back up too? I mean, you talked about partnerships. I want to learn more about the infrastructure you have to support these sporting events. But the Alliance, you said it came into existence in June of this year, but how long was it kind of bubbling for this to happen? Was it over the course of the last few years?
Yes, ever since I started with Explore Seattle Southside, it was something that as I stepped into the role, I went to my first conference where it was a collection of, a bunch of different destinations and sports commissions and tournament directors and event owners. And I'm starting to see that everybody has their own sports brand. There's a few destinations out there that are just, your Destination Denver or whatever. That's just a random example. And they're there representing the destination and have a person like me who's dedicated to sports. But it started to be more of this repetitive thing where it really made sense to create this sports brand. And it was something that, took just about 2 years for us to officially put together and launch. And we were able to do that because of that relationship building with our venues and partners, because as part of this alliance, I had the ask of those kind of key stakeholders to come together for a quarterly meeting. And so we talk about all things sports and what's going on and where we want to go and try and have something kind of a useful educational piece to that. So it was an ask from me to them for that buy-in. And so that relationship was something that took time to build and for them to kind of understand, why are we doing this?
Okay, so time and advocacy. What other challenges might did you run into when putting this alliance together? Some folks might want to do something similar in their part of Washington. So if they can learn from you, from how you overcame a challenge, perhaps that would be ideal.
Sure. I think, again, yeah, it was that relationship building and just kind of educating why we exist. Just even as a DMO, people understanding what the world of tourism is. And I take great pride in wanting to support the local communities. There's such a big piece with sports. It's such a uniting way to gather and create community that I want to support what we have already existing, so that it's when a new event comes in, it's meaningful to the community and they want to participate themselves. So that educational component of our partners was definitely something that took time and was challenging. But I would say, again, sound maybe like a broken record, but going back to the funding, that is a big challenge. And I'm fortunate in the way that we're structured right now is that we are an extension of Explore Seattle Southside.
Exactly.
So we have that funding from that DMO, so we're able to partner in that way. But it's definitely challenging because of the way that Seattle Southside is funded through the tourism tax. You know, a lot of sports tournament directors, they see and understand the value that they bring to communities. And there's a lot of moving pieces that it takes to bring that event to a new city.
Sure.
And there's a lot of cost that comes with it. And our budget isn't always something that can be used for those costs. To be completely transparent, like we can't pay bid fees. We're taxpayer dollar funded. So that is a big challenge when trying to recruit new events to the area, is like, how can we partner with existing venues or businesses to help us bring these events in? How can we get creative with the hotels and, you know, really just tap into all of the resources that we have. So being able to establish a clear funding stream, and then also just understanding that there are ways to work around it. You just kind of have to think and get creative.
Yes, problem solving, creative thinking. Yes. So
Mhm.
yeah, you mentioned problem solving, creative thinking, partnerships, and tell us a little bit more about the venues, your kind of infrastructure for sports tourism around your area.
Yeah, so being so close to Seattle, we are part of the same county. So we have, you know, 25-minute drive south from downtown is Starfire Sports, the soccer complex with 12 outdoor soccer fields, 2 indoor fields, and one of those fields outside is a 4,000 person stadium, turf stadium. That's where the Seattle Seawolves, the professional rugby team, shout out, actually play. And we have a really awesome BMX track. CTEC BMX is going to be hosting the Gold Cup finals next year in September. It's the first time that they've had the opportunity to host a kind of national level event where it's going to bring in a lot of visitors, and we partnered with them to help complete that bid and get the funding to be able to operate that event. There's
And
the
that already says a lot, Cydney. I mean, you know, from soccer stadiums and rugby stadiums to bike tracks, like, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of variety in your area. And did you have a slide that you wanted to share,
Yeah,
a visual that maybe
sure.
could help folks out?
Sure. So it's just a little visual. Just to kind of, just some images for y'all to look at, just kind of share the partnership aspect. I think that's one of the most important things that I've had to rely on in creating this alliance, is that yes, we are an established brand of Explore Seattle Southside, but we are trying to put something new out there, the Seattle Southside Sports, and you can see our new logo up in the top left. So they're very similar, but you know, an extension of what we are currently doing. This is a photo of the CTEC BMX. They're a really great organization who have fundraised over $1 million themselves privately to renovate the track and bring it
Wow.
up to the standards that they want for the community and to be able to host events. And I just wanted to showcase, this is something that we did this year in partnership with the Seattle Seawolves. None of these things that we couldn't have done any of this by ourselves. That, that relationship we've had with Starfire and the Seawolves has allowed us to create a calendar for 2025, and it ties into what the DMO is trying to do. Every month we're featuring Seawolves players at a different Seattle Southside location, whether it's at the Cedarbrook Hotel, Cedarbrook Lodge for a Thanksgiving Christmas dinner, or they're down at the Des Moines Marina for a picnic. This photo is a photo of them at Angle Lake paddleboarding. So it's just kind of like a fun partnership that we did, and we're able to promote the Seawolves, but also the destination itself. And then the last piece that I just wanted to talk about is being that, iteration of the strength in your partnerships is through working with Starfire. We have taken kind of a piece off of their plate, which is all of the housing for the tournaments that they host and operate. So there's 5 big tournaments that Starfire themselves operate, and we manage all of the hotel and reservations. So this was just a little screenshot of what that actual event looked like from their website. And you can see that there's a tab where they can click straight to the hotel reservations. We've done hotel room blocks, and then there's area attractions and trip planning and that kind of thing. So we're just trying to offer resources, not only just bringing in new events, but it's supporting our partners that already exist and making, their lives a little bit easier so that they can focus on their, bread and butter, the sport of rugby, or executing the tournaments.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Cydney. I think you've done a great job elaborating on the types and the size of the sporting events in your neck of the woods. Seems like the community and the business community has really embraced it, and I wish you luck in the future. So, folks, we're right on time. Excellent. So we'll bring Tammy back in, and we'll have a group discussion about some challenges and trends within sports tourism. I'm interested in learning more about incentives too, and bid fees, and how those have kind of changed, or I assume increased over the years. Do you have any advice when it comes to navigating bid fees, Cydney or Tammy?
I think my brief input on this, and I'm sure Tammy, you have a greater depth of knowledge, is it's just you have to understand what your organization can and can't do, and you have to be willing to just say, you know what, this isn't going to work, or I can connect you with people that you can have a conversation with this about, but you have to know where your boundaries are as an organization. And I think Tammy mentioned it before, it may not be the best fit. So you just have to find that event and that partnership that works.
And I agree. And I think if there's a bid fee attached to an event RFP, it's really going back to the event organizer and asking what is the money used for? If it's used to just pocket pocket the money in their pocket, that may not be the best use. But if it's for something that is on the event budget, that particular event budget, maybe it's not cash. Maybe they're asking for 10,000 bid fee. If you understand what they're asking for and what that bid fee is for, then maybe there's ways that you can negotiate, because even though it says that, there's negotiation, and have those conversations, do your homework, do the research, and build that relationship with that event organizer, because then you can say, well, hey, how about if you apply for this grant for marketing dollars, because you have marketing in your event, so that can help with that. So it's really trying to understand what the dollars are for, rather than just saying, yep, I got to pay that $10,000. So that's kind of how I look at it, because it's all negotiable.
Are there any other grants or sources of funding that could help pay bid fees other than, the sports incentivization grant from State of Washington Tourism?
Well, for us, it's it's really county and the city LTAC grants,
Mhm.
because those are, according to their process, it's facility costs, event operations, or marketing. And so that bid fee, if it's paying for facility costs or something in the event operations, that's all part of it so that they can apply. The tricky part is that if it's a for-profit company, and I'll just throw one out there nationally, which we've worked with in the past. When I first started, is Triple Crown Sports. They're for profit. So, you know, it's understanding who that organization is, because not everybody can apply to these LTAC grants. And so, but then it's also about being creative. Is there ways that you can get partnerships from your local community, your businesses, where they're a sponsor to an event, so that they can make it a win-win situation.
Excellent. And where do folks find, where can folks find RFPs or kind of bid on these events? I think I might have forgotten to mention it. Again, I was impressed with all of the resources from Sports ETA. Isn't there an RFP clearinghouse for organizations to kind of list their sporting event for folks like you to bid on?
There are a few different resources. Sports ETA is a membership-based organization that if you're interested in sports tourism, I highly recommend. There's lots of educational resources, but they also do post RFPs. I also work with Play Easy, which is a platform that allows you to list your events that are happening in the area, your hotels, market the event, local businesses and attractions. And they also have collection of RFPs on there as well. Those are the two that really come to top of mind from a, being able to log on and see them digitally. But then there's a whole world, if you're familiar with the meetings and business travel world, we have that for sports, where we go to conferences and have in-person meetings, do that professional speed dating where we're meeting with tournament directors and getting their RFPs from them in person and learning about them and asking questions.
Excellent. Yeah, good point. Thanks, Cydney. Okay, other challenges and trends in the industry. What about reporting? I've shared a lot about economic impact today. I don't know, I was kind of quick with my slides, but did I mention an economic impact calculator from Sports ETA? Is that the only economic impact calculator that folks like you could use to measure economic impact, or are there other resources out there to help measure economic impact in sports tourism?
Yeah, I think the standard industry for the destination management organizations is the Tourism Economic Impact Calculator, which you pay. It's a paid subscription is the best way I can describe it. It's through Destinations International. You do need to be a member of Destinations International, and I want to say probably majority of the DMOs are members of Destinations International. And that is one that I think has become the leader in the economic impact. There are other economic impact calculators out there, but I think most of the DMOs we do use the Destination International. There's the meetings module, there's the festivals module and events, there's also sports. And so they've broken that down. So that really helps because it can tell us more than just room nights and economic impact. It can tell us hotel revenue. It can tell us how many jobs this event creates, the tax dollars that goes back into the community. And so there's a lot of pieces there that goes way beyond just reporting room nights and economic impact. And that helps with the data as well. And then, you mentioned the data analytics. We want to know where people are coming from, because going back, trying to gather that information can take days. But if you use Datify, Placer AI, a lot of the destinations or even the municipalities are using the Datify to help them with it, that's helping with the marketing aspect, not necessarily for the sports. And so it can kind of help. But if you don't have it, work with your city who has it, so that you guys can partner together and help them understand what you've got with sports, so that they can see the trends and help their businesses.
Yeah, we
Excellent.
use similar resources, and collecting that data has been extremely important to be able to show the value of these events, and be able to, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of what we do without the partnership of our cities. They get it, and they're investing in it, and they're able to help us fund different events, because they see that this is, smart, good business.
Yeah, it's just good business. There's a lot of it touches a lot of tourism stakeholders. And some of these, like, Cydney, these events can be small, and Tammy, they can be big international conferences. It just kind of depends on your stakeholders and infrastructure in your communities, or just kind of the bandwidth of your staff. Can you kind of elaborate on how, if you work with volunteers, Cydney, or Tammy, you have a staff of 3, 4?
There's
Forward to
total
kind
four
of
of us. Yep.
get this work done. Maybe you can do some of the work yourself. Do you kind of outsource some of the work? Do you hire a project manager? Do you work with a third-party housing provider? What advice can you give folks about that?
I have a very quick answer to this. I think Tammy is much more in the realm of actually event execution. She actually has an event, a specialist to do event operations. We're very much in the world of helping bring the events here, helping market them, but we do not actually produce or run any events ourselves. So we're in, the people convening and the connection business. So we have yet to be able to branch out into that realm. I would love to at some point, but that's not what we're doing at down in Seattle Southside yet. But we do work with third-party housing to and I help manage that, and that is another piece that ties back to the data, where we get a lot of information from working with it's called Event Connect, and doing room blocks. So that helps me to be able to do things that I need to support the event, or showcase to the city why this event is important. But yeah, Tammy definitely can speak to more about the event execution piece.
Yeah, no, I will say, though we have a staff of 4. I have a development coordinator, I have a marketing specialist, and I have an events coordinator, and then I have myself. We weren't always like this. So where Cydney is right now, we were there 20 years ago. So I actually was part-time. I only did it maybe 3 days out of the week, 2 days out of the week, and slowly worked our way. And so it's really kind of showing the proven record. And that's where, you can only handle so much, because you still are trying to help that event organizer while you're trying to find the new business. But then if you have the ability, where Cydney's got a marketing department as well, then she can help with that marketing department. So there's those pieces that others in your organization can help, and so that you're not always doing everything. And so having that partnership within, and that flexibility and that teamwork helps. You eventually will grow. You grow enough that you need another development coordinator, so that you have another person doing sales, because it's just too much for one. But it takes time. Just can't happen. It doesn't happen overnight. And so you slowly build up. So, where we're at is kind of after 20 years and some changes in that, because we were, as a sports commission, we really had 2 people, and then we had a third person as a marketing, and now we have 4. So
Wow.
we've slowly grown back up to get us back to normal, as if we didn't have the pandemic. I will say that some people do have that more execution, where they run their own events. We are kind of a little bit of a hybrid. We don't necessarily run any events except one. I like to say we run a Sports Hall of Fame banquet, and that is our only one that we control, we manage. We have to make sure it's financially sound. But when we're working with the tournament directors, it's their event, we're assisting them. So the way I look at it is that we're providing that community aspect kind of outside their four walls. They're working on the event. We're taking care of the community, involving our community, getting our restaurants involved, getting our hotels involved. And anybody else, volunteers, if we need volunteers, so that people can feel that community sense, and then they can kind of volunteer and be part of that. So that's kind of that connection, that how we look at some things. And so we might be a little bit farther along than where Cydney's at, but I'd say give her a couple more years. She'll probably have a second person helping her out.
Good. Yeah, I hope so. Well, yeah, it sounds like a lot of work. Thanks, Tammy and Cydney. Folks, we have a few minutes left, so I'm going to open up questions for the audience. Mike, were there any questions that came in?
Yeah, we really just had one question. It came from Kristen Keltz, and I answered it in the Q&A. But she asked if she anticipated another round of our sports incentivization grant coming out in 2025. And actually, the one that we have open now is our 2025 sports incentivization grant. The money that we're getting that was given to us from the Department of Commerce. It's all EDA funds, and it needs to be spent by the grantee by the end of 2025. And so we've pushed it into this year to give people a little bit more time. We understand that it's like Tammy was mentioning, it's a long cycle, to bid on grants. So we're trying our best to give you as much time as possible. We're hoping someday in the future we'll have a fully funded, state tourism office that we'd be able to help provide these grants kind of continually, and then we definitely stretch those cycles out much longer. But for now, this is kind of we're doing what we can with what we have, and just so you know, all those eligible and ineligible rules, those all come from using those federal EDA dollars. Those are not rules from SWT. So just so you know, if they seem kind of arbitrary, that's from the feds, not from us. But as Cydney was talking about earlier, that it's hard for some of these organizations to be bidding on these events, and so this is a very specific grant to really help you all try to bring these national or international tournaments or competitions or beard mustache competitions to your destination. So it's very specific that way. It's not for putting on a fun run or starting your own competition. It's really for those tournaments that are traveling around the country or the world. Not that we have anything against those fun runs. We have other grants that could possibly be used for that, but this one is specific for those types of tournaments or competitions.
Good point. Thanks, Mike, for that clarification. I skipped over that detail.
We have one more question. What are your suggestions to network with proper people to make connections to support these organizations and receive RFPs for some of these sporting events? We're not located in the heart of Seattle, and so we have a challenge reaching those sporting events. And this is our last, we're at 11 o'clock, so this will be the last question. Tammy, go ahead. You look like you're...
I was reading the question in that I think one opportunity, and this is one that I continue today, is making the connections with your local sports organizations. Your local sports organizations have the connection to the affiliates, to the Olympic national governing bodies. I'll just use wrestling as a great example. Connecting with your local wrestling clubs, they put on their own tournaments, so you can find ways to how to help them. And they're a key, because if you talk to them, you can then connect with the state chair and find out what they have available. And if they know that you're connected with your local wrestling clubs, then that is really helpful, because they know that you already have a volunteer base, because they're the ones that are going to help you with that tournament and run that tournament. And then the state chair can help with even the national governing bodies, USA Wrestling. So they can help you make those connections with those individuals. I think the other one is really learning more about Sports ETA. That is the association for the sports commissions and the sports divisions in our in the United States, and we're here about helping you educate, and we're helping finding ways so you can be successful. And I'll say the same with Cydney and I. We're competitors, but for the state and how we can represent ourselves, we need to collaborate and we work together. Because if I have an event that doesn't fit, then where else can I put it? And I know I've talked to somebody that they wanted a mud run, and I said, I don't have any opportunity. And I said, go talk to Eric in Bellingham. He might have some locations. Don't know if he did, but it's referring them so that we keep that business here. So I think it's just really about collaborating with all of us, and we're here to help you.
We love that. Thank you, Tammy. All right, Matt.
Yeah, folks, thank you for joining us on today's webinar. We do not have a Skillshop webinar in December, but we'll come back in January. So stay tuned for more information on the Skillshop in January, and you'll get a slide deck from everyone on the webinar today, as well as the recording on Monday. So see you again soon.
Thank you, Cydney.
you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you all.
Thank you.